Well, guess what?
Back again.
It's back.
Back again.
Yeah.
And we're back. And we're back.
They're back again.
Back again.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Back Against Sequel Podcast, the only podcast that takes a sequel from the past and finds out if it is still worth going back again. As always, I'm Matt, and today we have a very special guest. You know him from our Jurassic Park The Lost World episode. He's an actor and, believe it or not, a professional Rocky Balboa impersonator. It's Bear Lyle. Bear, how are you doing?
Man, I want to say thanks for having confidence in me. I'm going to be here anyway.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Well, thanks for being down to do this episode today, and I hope you are ready to jump into the ring because today we are continuing our mini-series of summer sports sequels by doing the follow-up to Rocky from 1976, and we are doing Rocky 2.
Rocky, his whole life was 1,000,000-to-1 shot, but he's about to show the world he's 1 in 1,000,000.
Why don't you stand up and fight this guy hard like you done before? That was beautiful.
Rocky 2, the story continues.
Rocky 2 came out in 1979. It is written and directed by Sylvester Stallone. It's starring Sylvester Stallone, Talia Shire, Carl Weathers, Burt Young, and Burgess Meredith. After surprisingly going the distance with heavyweight champion Apollo Creed, Rocky struggles to adapt to life outside the ring. Taunted by the media and pressed for money, Rocky agrees to a grueling rematch to prove his legendary first fight was no fluke. All right, Bear, here we are. We are doing Rocky 2, and it's kind of interesting because, like, the relevancy of doing this episode right now, you know, we are in the 50th anniversary year of the first Rocky when it came out. Not only that, we just got a trailer released a couple days ago for the making of this movie, which is I Play Rocky, and the story about how Sylvester Stallone made Rocky at a time when he was a nobody, and frankly, nobody wanted him to play Rocky. They liked the script, but they were like, we don't want this guy to act. And that's kind of interesting because even within the confines of this movie, Rocky Balboa is doing commercials and stuff, and people get mad at him because Rocky can't act. So just in like the realm of like, you know, Sylvester Stallone playing Rocky and then Rocky Balboa like in the movie, my biggest question for you to start this off is Sylvester Stallone a good actor?
You don't have to speak.
You know what? He's one of those actors that falls into the category of he's good at playing himself. I think he's very in tune to, you know, expressing how he feels, like, you know, with his range of emotions. But I do consider him to be like, you know, as far as the range of 80s like iconic action actors go, I think he actually holds his own. Like, I think he gets it done.
It's one of those things where, like, you know, because the Rocky character is such a staple in the sense of playing like a simpleton. And you're going to get kind of two sides to Rocky within a Stallone performance. You're going to get like, you know, not bumbling, but just kind of like the easygoing, like, you know, ADD kind of just like rambling, kind of talking light stuff, commenting on everything. And then you're going to get these more kind of quieter moments where he is like feeling insecure, has self-doubt, or maybe even like gets mad because there's something internal building up inside of him. And I do think he plays somber better than light and jokey, but overall, I do think he does the light and jokey stuff better like in the second movie.
Well, that was one of the things that I watched both of these again, like within a couple of days of each other, just to juxtapose them. Because obviously the first one of the most iconic movies of all time, nominated for all of those Academy Awards. And then juxtaposing it to this one, which had 0 Academy Award nominations, and I wanted to see what the difference was. So in the first one, I don't really think that Rocky could be described as like a simpleton, because in Rocky 2, he's a simpleton. Like, he's just a dude, are you okay? Which, you know, in the beginning of the movie, they mentioned multiple times, I think this guy has brain damage.
Rocky, do you think you have brain damage?
I don't see any.
And the whole rest of Rocky 2 just kind of goes on to reaffirm that. But the first one, when he speaks, it's basic, but you understand it. And rewatching the first one, I was like, you know what? He's not really that dumb. He just takes in life and like kind of expresses how he feels about it and the lessons of it, like in a very basic manner. Meanwhile, in Rocky 2, he's just a goofball. And in Rocky 2, you don't really see him get angry that much. In Rocky 1, there's multiple instances where you see him get very angry. He doesn't have any sort of like angry monologues like this, unless I'm forgetting any. In Rocky 2, he kind of is just taking everything as it happens and just like not really having that much of a visceral response. That was the major difference I saw between the two performances and depictions of the character.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's instead of maybe simpleton, like there's a naiveness about him. He's very like easygoing, go with the flow, man of the people. I think because he goes the distance in the first one, there is like a closure that he starts this movie with. Like he's got the affirmation that he needs in himself. And he doesn't really want to prove anything anymore. So throughout the second one, there feels like there's lots of moments where he could get mad because people are either insulting his intelligence on set, telling him that he can't read, or there's like people in the street calling him a chicken because he won't do the fight with Apollo, and he always kind of smiles it off. And I think that that's maybe a deliberate choice to show that like he's not letting these things get to him, but then that kind of strikes into a bigger issue later when it comes to the motivation of why he wants to fight. If you don't have like an exploding moment, is it more about that he's like fighting out of like love and like honor in the second one? I don't know. But I agree with you that like at least having the frustration and the exploding moments in the first one, I think adds to the character more. Whereas in the second one, he does kind of like let things roll off his shoulder a little bit more, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we all know another incredibly well-known Sylvester Stallone franchise, Rambo, in which
we did on the podcast.
Yes, you did, and it was masterful.
Do you think flattery will keep you alive?
But the first one, is a very, very strong anti-war message about like the horrors of war and what it does to the people afterwards. But then every movie after that, it's just all about guns blazing, and so it's very contradictory. And I think this franchise as well follows in that same path because the message I took from the first one was that it wasn't about being the best in the public eye. It was being the best that he could be for himself. And that's why at the end of Rocky 1, nobody cares. Like the filmmakers, they don't care. They brush off the fact that Apollo won and that he was renamed the champion. It was kind of just a throwaway because that entire time, Rocky is calling out for Adrian. And like he gets her in his arms. He said, "I love you." And then that's how the movie is. That was what was important. But the contradictory thing about Rocky 2 is that he has to go back to fighting and he has to win this time. He has to be the best. And I thought it was a little bit clunky because in Rocky 1, as when the fight ends, while he and Apollo are still grappling, Apollo says, "There ain't going to be a rematch."
Yeah.
And Rocky says, "I don't want one." The moment they're in that hospital at the beginning, Apollo is in the wheelchair. They have that goofy scene where all their entourages bump into each other. Apollo's like, "You named the place. I'm fighting you again. It's happening."
Yeah.
And then later on, whenever Rocky kind of goes into his hospital room where Apollo's laying there and he goes, "Hey, Apollo, like, did you give it your best?" And Apollo's like, "Yeah, I gave it my best." And I thought to myself, well, wouldn't it have been more motivational for Rocky if Apollo had said, "No, I didn't give it my best. You didn't get my best."
Yeah, it is clunky because, like you said, that first one, even though it's a boxing movie, it's more of a love story between him and Adrian. And, in general, just to like sum up, like, this first Rocky movie, it's kind of like Die Hard in a way where people will often say like, well, this is like Rocky, but this, Karate Kid. It's like Rocky, but it's karate. But this movie is like, it brought a life on its own of like telling the underdog story. Like you said, it had 10 Oscar nominations. It won Best Picture. It won Best Director, won Best Film Editing. But more than that, it's like a huge huge success. You know, just to get into the budget in the box office a little bit, you know, the budget was like $1.1 million in 1976 and ends up making $225 million, right, at that time. And I think it was like the second biggest movie up until like Star Wars came out or something. And the one thing I will say that's kind of interesting about the sequel is in between, you know, the first Rocky and the second Rocky, Stallone does like 2 movies that kind of flop at the box office. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, okay, this movie that you wanted to make like won these Oscars, you are a success, but now you're not finding successful projects after this. And now you feel obligated to return to this successful franchise to make a movie. And this time around, Stallone directs Rocky 2, and he was very adamant about, like, this is going to be my directorial debut and I'm going to make this movie. So there is this kind of like interesting meta commentary within the movie itself where it feels like Stallone is saying, like, I can do more than maybe the world thinks that I can do. So even if I return to this franchise, I can prove to you that there's more story to tell. And I don't know, it's hard not to like notice that when you know that information when you're watching the second one, because it's like we have to justify why he wants to fight again. And I agree that the messaging is clunky, but I do think that to the best of his ability, like, it could have been worse. Like, it could have been even sloppier. And I still think he still kind of proves that Rocky still like has like a reason to fight, but I don't think it happens until like the fight itself. And for a lot of Rocky 2, it's really just him, like, I guess, trying to figure out what to do with his life and then realizing, well, I guess I can't do anything else. And I don't know if that's meta commentary about Stallone. Like,
it's so depressing. Like, you know, because he fights, he gives it his all, and he's like, I'm retired. I'm done. I don't want to make a living out of, like, getting the crap beat out of me. And so he tries to just, like, you know, live his life happily. He proposes to Adrian at the zoo, which is a place that came highly recommended to him in the first movie.
Come on.
Tell you what to do. Take it to the zoo. I hear like the zoo.
Watch your mouth, young man.
So, like, he marries Adrian. They buy their dream house. He gets a car. He gets all the clothes. He gets, like, for himself and the dog. And then she's pregnant with their kid. But what I thought was, like, really sad and, like, questionable, like, character motives is that everyone kind of just steers him, like, back into this direction inadvertently to fight again, because obviously Adrian is very concerned with the amount of money that, like, Rocky is spending and how quickly he is, and he's not haggling for a price on the house. But whenever he goes into the to do commercials and he's dressed up as the caveman or Tarzan or whatever it is, he asks her, "Hey, how do I look?" And she's like, "Different." Like, you could tell that she's like, I don't like any of this. I'm just like, okay, but how's he supposed to make money then? And so anyway, that falls apart. And then even when he goes to Mickey and he's like, hey, Mickey, I guess I got to fight again. Mickey is like, you know, tests his blindness with his eye. And he's like, you can't do it again. You're done. It's over for you. And he's like, okay, can I work at the gym then? He's like, what? Like, you know, dumping buckets of water? There's no dignity in that. You look undignified. It's just like, Mickey, throw him a bone or something. Gosh, like, it's all these people in his life that are, I think, not for the fault of their character motives, but for the fault of the writing that are just kind of making life a little bit tougher for him, which steers him back to the whole thing of, like, I guess I got to go back to doing what I'm good at.
I think structurally it makes sense, right? Like, I do think, like, on paper, those things are like the natural progression of, like, the story that you could do that makes it feel grounded. But I do think it's, like, missing that pivotal moment of, like, justification of, like, why he decides to fight again. Because if he said offhand after the first fight, like, you know, I'm retired, I don't want to do this anymore, and he was saying that because he felt like that was enough, that he got that closure, and this movie is about, like, him realizing, like, oh, there's a second level to this that I maybe didn't realize. I think you can absolutely have those conversations that work in the movie. I just don't think that they do that to the full extent. Like, he has, like, that moment where he's talking to Adrian. He goes, like, hey, like,
I never asked you to stop being a woman, you know? Please, I'm asking you, please, don't ask me to stop being a man.
I wrote that down.
And it's like
I wrote that down because I was like, I don't know if that's the most logical / progressive thing to.
It feels like that scene should have been more kind of echoes of what he said sprinkled throughout the movie, which was like, I don't know how to do anything else. And yes, I made a lot of money off that first fight. And he, like I said, he kind of says this, which is like, but I need to make sure that we're well off again. And the only way that's going to happen is if I win. So if this second one is about like winning at life, they kind of are mirroring this with like winning with like, having a kid and stuff like that. And I think pieces are there, but I just think it's one of those things where it's like, you didn't just like finish it a little bit. And personally, I actually think the structure of the second one is a little bit easier to watch than the structure of the first one. And, just to kind of dabble in it a little bit, like, I do think that Rocky is a little bit more charming in the second one. So you put him in situations where he has to kind of like, and I agree, it's depressing because they're just like beaten down on him in his whole life. But I think from a dramatic standpoint, that puts him in a position that makes him inherently more interesting. And I do think he is more sweet with Adrian in the second one.
The main thing that was missing from Rocky 2, in my opinion, was the heart. Because the first one, you're kind of just seeing Rocky's life as it is. And so that's when you get to see his kind of fleshed out life, and you get to see the range of his emotions that we were talking about earlier. But then the second one, since you already know Rocky, you're kind of just watching him blow all his money and then letting life happen to him. He has no control over it. We're talking about his lack of responses whenever he does start to get bullied again. And Rocky just doesn't have a response. You can say it's because he just like, he's like, I'm kind of got a depreciative outlook on myself. So I just let it roll off my back. But in my opinion, it's a detraction because he's just unresponsive.
Yeah. And I think if we had to like, it's like, okay, well, what do you do? Right. Let's say we can't really like change this movie, but we see that there are pieces there that just aren't finished. Like, what could you do to this second one to really earn what I think is like the theme or the message of the movie? And I think it's kind of right there. I think it has to do with Apollo, because Apollo Creed is in this movie more than the first one. And, Carl Weathers is a fantastic actor, but I think that his dynamic in the second one is inherently more interesting, and you can use that to fuel Rocky outside of just like, humiliating him and trying to get him back in the ring.
Well, it would have been so much more, in my opinion, if in the hospital, when Rocky asks him, hey, did you give it your all? Like, was that your best? I think if Apollo says that wasn't my best, then that needles at Rocky. I think that is more of a driving force to get him back into the ring.
Well, it's like, it's interesting too, because it's like he's also got dynamics with his wife that could have mirrored the relationship between Rocky and Adrian, because like his wife is telling him to get over it, kind of similar to what Adrian's saying, like, don't fight again. And he just can't let this go. And I think all you really need to do, even if we keep that scene where he says, yeah, I gave you my best, right? He could have just been saying that. And maybe this isn't really about like that. Maybe all we're missing is a scene later in the movie where Apollo just meets up with Rocky somewhere quiet, and he talks to him and he says, listen, you are a good fighter and I'm a good fighter. And the thing that because I'm a professional, so I'm going to like educate you a little bit now. And I'm going to tell you that you're never going to be able to not fight. This is kind of themes that they do later in like Rocky 3 and 4, because like he teams up with Apollo in Rocky 3 and he helps him train and stuff. But this could have been a moment where he goes, this isn't something your wife's going to understand. This isn't something the public's going to understand. And this isn't even necessarily about winning. This is about, while you have this body and you have this skill set, you're not good at anything else. He goes, you're lying to yourself if you think that this was always just about one fight. This is about like you can't just like turn this off. He's like, you owe it to yourself to like give your body everything until there's like nothing left. And I'm not saying like this would have like fixed everything, but in general, I just would have liked more Apollo in this movie, because whenever they're cutting back between like a bad training montage with Rocky to like an efficient training montage with Apollo Creed, I'm like, that's great. I actually wish that there was another one of those later when like Gonna Fly Now is playing. But I think that what Rocky needed, he needed to learn something from Apollo. like in the second one, and it didn't feel like they felt like it was necessary, but I would argue it is.
Well, you're exactly onto something, because I feel that's what could have taken the place of the line and the conversation that Rocky has with Adrian, where he says,
"Don't ask me to stop being a man."
Yeah, like, and I just find it so interesting that the responsibility of Rocky being motivated to fight falls in the hands of Adrian in this movie. Because most of my notes about Adrian, which is like everybody shits on her in this. I mean, Rocky doesn't, but like everybody shits on her with this. Paulie is a dick. Paulie's blaming her. And it's like none of this is Adrian's fault. And the fact that she goes into a coma, which really only happens because Talia Shire was filming something else and they just didn't have access to her. But, she wakes up from her coma with 35 minutes left in the movie. And then at 32 minutes left in the movie, she tells Rocky that she wants him to do something. And he's like, what? And she says the famous line, which is like,
Win.
And I think that moment in itself is like a powerful moment because, I've seen that parodied so many times where, she's like, just win. And then you cut to Mickey and he's like, well, what are we waiting for? And it is a good, motivational tactic, but it just makes you think why is this her responsibility?
Well, Matt, I mean, I'm glad you asked why it is that, that she's trying to prevent him and everything. Luckily, Rocky II had an amazing wardrobe department that was able to convey this message with the shirt that she was wearing during their conversation, talking about, I don't ask you to not be a woman, don't ask me. She's just wearing the shirt that just says, baby. Even more so whenever Mickey does show up to the apartment to be like, we got to get back out there. And Rocky turns and he looks at the stairs and she is just standing there, middle camera, full bodied, baby, arrow.
It's like a horror scene shot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rocky.
And it's almost like, oh, thank God we have this shirt to convey why it is that she doesn't want him to get back in there. Same thing with Mickey. All it takes for Mickey to have his turnaround was that he's watching that presser of the reporter interviewing Apollo. And he's like, don't you want to get back in the ring with Rocky? And he's of course I do. He's a bum. Where'd he go? He's gone. No one's heard from him. No one knows anything about him. That's because he's a bum. He's a coward. He's nobody. And Mickey's watching that with his soup and crackers. And he sees that part and just goes, and just throws the soup and crackers everywhere and immediately runs to Rocky's house. And it's just like, I say we knock his block off. That's the exact quote.
Yeah, I mean, Mickey also, he could have just, this whole movie, he could have just always been on board to do a second fight, and Rocky just, he could have just flipped those things, like the first one, because Mickey is, an opportunist. Even when he decides to help Rocky in the first one, he's only helping him because he's got a shot at the title. In the second one, they reversed it to where Rocky wants to go to Mickey, but I think structurally it just doesn't work because, we always have to start these characters in one spot and then convince them to go to another. And I think Mickey could have just always stayed on the side of no, let's keep going. We got it. You're a machine. We almost won that first one. Let's do this momentum. Again. Yeah. Even to go back to the shirts really quick, Adrian's wearing a shirt that says baby. And then after she says win for me, then when Rocky does his training montage, he's wearing a shirt that says win, Rocky, win. So it's he's literally he's so handcuffed to Adrian's approval that he physically takes things that she says and puts it on his shirt.
Yeah.
to train. But it's interesting because, once we actually do start the training montage and, we have the famous music, Gonna Fly Now, there seems to be this unintentional theme about being a father and providing for your family. And when he finally has his baby and she says win for me and stuff, it almost feels like she's saying win for us. And I'm bringing that up because even when we do the Gonna Fly Now training montage, my God, we have this scene where all the kids are running with Rocky in the street, which, was a big practical deal at the time. And it was impressive. They got 800 people to run with him. And it goes so much into this kid theme where Bill Conti, the guy that does like the music, he remixed Gonna Fly Now and added in a children's choir while Rocky is running. So this is a continuation of this thought, which is like, all this stuff is kind of on paper of like what's going to be the motivation for Rocky to fight again, but they don't like justify why we're doing it. And I think in that same breath, I will say that regardless of all these issues that we kind of have with it, it's still a testament to like the lore of Rocky, that when he does start that training montage, you're kind of like, I don't know, I kind of still get into it a little bit. I'm kind of like, all right, here we go. Like, I like the music, I like the training. The only thing that I wish was in this Gonna Fly Now training montage in the second one was cutting back to Apollo also training, because there's that moment in the song, and I can't play the song too much during this review because, you know, they're going to take it down, but like it's when that guitar kind of comes in and I'm like, that's a perfect moment to cut to Apollo.
Another tidbit of information. Somebody went through and marked where during the training montage where Rocky starts running, and then obviously leading up to the steps. And they're like, how long was Rocky running? It came out to 30.2 miles, which is 4 more miles than a marathon.
That doesn't make sense.
And, you know, I think in general, like, because everything like we've been talking about kind of then leads naturally to this idea of Stallone as a director. Because this is, you know, Stallone has multiple franchises that have multiple sequels. You know, this is his directorial debut. And I got to be honest, like, I don't think it's directed poorly. Like, a lot of these issues that we're talking about really come down to like character motivation and like the script and stuff like that. But even in regards to the final fight itself, I think the fight is way better directed than the fight in the first Rocky. Because the fight in the first Rocky, like, we get the first round and everything, and then we kind of just jump to round like 14. And in this one, I think he does the smart thing of not only showing us more rounds and creating almost an arc out of the fight itself, but he does more kind of stylized things with the camera, where he has like some slow motion effects. He has like some music cues and stuff like that. Like, I just think it's a very well directed and edited kind of final fight. And, you know, just in general, like, I enjoyed the fight in the second one more than the fight in the first one. And I think that that's something, at least.
I might debate with you a little bit on that, just in that I see what you're saying about the first one, but the second fight, like, yeah, he uses a bunch of other like stylizations, and he does a bunch of zoom ins. One of the notes I took was halfway through the fight in Rocky 2, everyone is so wet. Like, there is so much saliva. Yeah. Like, there is so much spitting. Like, there's a couple of moments where Tony Burton, who plays Apollo's trainer, and there's a moment where when Apollo's in the corner and Tony tells him, like, he says, like, stick and move or something like that. Just this gush, this waterfall of spit comes out of him. I'm like, why is everybody so wet right now? And then even as it got down to the very end of that fight, maybe Stallone kept it more exciting and electric with the amount of quick cutaways to all these various different characters, whether it's Adrian, whether it's Paulie, whether it's Apollo's wife, whether it's Mickey, whether it's Tony Burton. And so, yeah, he keeps it going and he keeps it moving with that. And the other thing I'm going to add in about the fight is that, boy, if we thought that Rocky's ability to defend himself was terrible in the first one, that guy, he doesn't defend himself once. Maybe once towards the end when he's like, oh God, I'm in the corner. But he takes so many just blows to the face with his like arms down. Just zero defense in this movie.
But that's the thing. It's like, that's what Rocky is. Rocky just, no matter how much he gets beat, he keeps getting up again. And, Apollo's winning this fight by a huge margin because of the fact that Rocky can't guard his face and he's just getting point after point after point, but he can't knock out Rocky. So therefore his ego is getting the best of him. And he goes I can't let this fight end until I knock this guy out. And it's not until the last round that he loses the fight because he just couldn't play it safe.
He won't keep away.
And that's why I think even more so this should have been more of Apollo's movie with Rocky opposed to just Rocky with a little bit more Apollo. And, speaking of getting knocked down and coming back again, I think this is a good time to talk about some money and some reviews, right? So like I was saying earlier, Rocky from 1976 has got a budget of $1.1 million. It makes $225 million at the box office on Rotten Tomatoes, even though Rotten Tomatoes is dumb. It's got a critical score of a 93%, but the first Rocky only has an audience score of a 69%, which I found interesting. We've already talked about the Oscar nominations and everything like that. Rocky 2 in 1979, it's got a budget of $7 million and it makes $200 million at the box office. So it doesn't make as much as the first one, but it's not like a failure. But then when you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score for the second one, it's like the critics then give the second one a 68%, but the audience score is an 82%. So it's interesting how the critics like the first one more and maybe the audience, they liked it, but they weren't really about it. But then maybe because the second one's a little bit flashier, the critics are down on it, but then the audience is with it. But I do think that, and I said this earlier, I think Stallone's a little bit more charming in the second one. And I was just surprised. I thought that there would be less distance between both the first and the second one in regard to the critic score and the audience score, because people love Rocky. This is this is a franchise that people will probably watch every Thanksgiving. Are these Thanksgiving movies? Oddly,
I think they're Thanksgiving. That was my big So that was my big question in the first one. Apollo said, we're gonna fight on the most patriotic day in America. I kept thinking, this is New Year's, though. This isn't 4th of July. Why do they keep saying this is the most patriotic day in America?
It's the day the Italians took over America was on New Year's Day.
Oh.
The Italian stallion. The media will eat it up. Now, who discovered America? An Italian, right?
Well, it took guts to murder people and put them in chains. He was a brave Italian explorer.
Sounds like a damn monster movie.
As always on this podcast, we have 3 questions that lead to a final vote of, was this worth going back again? And the first question is, does it work as a sequel?
I don't think it works as a sequel because we talked earlier about how his other movie, Rambo, is contradictory of itself because it goes from being very anti-war to just making a spectacle out of violence. I think it's the same thing. I think in the first one, he doesn't need to be the best. He just needs to prove himself to himself. And then in this one, he's like, well, I guess I got to be the best because I need money. And so I don't think it works as a sequel.
Here's the thing. It's all these things that we've been saying about it, I think are justified. I do think within the film itself, they at least have the maturity to at least bring up these topics. I think it's interesting that in a franchise that's about a guy fighting people, you have scenes where he's just struggling to get payment for slinging meat over his shoulder and putting it in a cooler. There's oddly restraint in these movies that showcase Rocky as a regular Joe. And because of the fact, you brought up Rambo 2, because we have seen Stallone sequels where they just regress the character so substantially to where it's well, you missed the whole point of the first movie. I kind of have to give this movie a little bit of praise for not doing that, for not just immediately jumping into a sequel where it's now Rocky's just gonna fight all the time. So I oddly think it does work as a sequel. I just don't think it works as good as it should have. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't work at all. All right, so that sounds like it's going to get a check and X to start off. So the next question is going to be, is it enjoyable / entertaining? And I'll start off this one. And I'll say, the struggle with the Rocky franchise, at least just with these first 2 movies, is everything we talked about, which is it's a 2-hour movie and we're not going to train until there's 30 minutes left and we're not going to fight until there's 15 minutes left. So it really comes down to, is it enjoyable enough and entertaining enough to watch an hour and a half of Stallone doing dialogue, right? I think it's enjoyable / entertaining enough, but I'm just going to be barely.
I'll agree with you. I think it is enjoyable because I think when you watch a movie the first time, since you're experiencing it for the first time, I have now seen this like twice within a week, and the second time just viewing it on its own again. It carries. You're right. Stallone definitely has very charming, like funny moments, even if they come off as like dim-witted whenever he's in the cathedral after he gets married and the commercial promoter comes up to him. It wasn't even the commercial promoter. It was Tony comes up to him. He's like, hey.
How's about investing in condominiums? It's safe.
Condominiums?
Yeah, condominiums.
I never use them.
So I basically have the same opinion as you do of saying like it's entertaining as a sequel. It's not The Godfather Part 2 or Empire Strikes Back, but if you want a sequel that the whole climax of the movie is exactly the same as the first one, and yet it remains enjoyable, this movie does it. And so I think despite being kind of a ripoff of its own self of the original, if you're still able to watch it and enjoy it, then yeah, it passes for me too.
So that sounds like it's going to get 2 checks. So the last question is going to be, does it need to exist?
I don't know. I think that I don't think it needs to exist actually, because as I kind of just said a second ago, it kind of is just a different version of the original with the same like trajectory, the same beats, the same points, and then ultimately the same climax. It doesn't need to exist.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's like there are so many staple movies. I was talking about Die Hard earlier in relation to Rocky, where it's like this movie kind of on its own is it serves its purpose, and it's like, do we need to keep kind of going back to this like world to keep telling stories? I think it's a little different because there is like 5 Die Hard movies, and there are 6 Rocky movies and 3 Creed movies. So it's like this franchise has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, very similar to like maybe Fast and Furious or something, just in regards to like number of installments, right?
You didn't talk about how many Rambo movies there are as well.
Absolutely, Rambo as well. So it's like what happens is that the movie becomes kind of, because of the cultural impact, it kind of becomes bigger. The character becomes bigger than just the isolated movie and what the movie kind of represented. And I do think whether you're talking about Rocky 2, 3, 4, 5 is terrible, but even Rocky Balboa, when they brought it back and he was a little bit older, and even the Creed movies, like it's a franchise where I think in general there is more like positive than negative. All things considered, by the time you get to like Rocky 4 with how ridiculous and cheesy that movie is, in hindsight, looking at the restraint of Rocky 2, I will say that I do think it needs to exist because Rocky himself cannot be knocked out, and I don't think that even if I voted against it, it would do anything because it's just such a big thing. So I do think it needs to exist, and if only for this reason, that if somebody was out there making a sequel to their staple movie, at least this one has more restraint and groundedness than like a Rambo 2. Like, I don't think Rambo 2 needs to exist. And I think I voted that way when we did the episode back in the day. So it's a weird thing because I don't think we've had a movie on this podcast where the answer to does it need to exist has been so kind of like layered like that. But I'm also not upset with anyone saying it doesn't need to exist. I don't disagree with that. But for this, I'll say like, yeah, I think I'm okay with it existing. So I'll give it a check more in that kind of realm. So if you're doing that math at home, that's going to be 4 checks and 2 X's. So it is going to get 1 giant check for worth going back again. So there you go, man. Rocky 2, it gets the big old check. And despite our criticisms about it, and despite, critics telling Sylvester Stallone, like, you don't need to keep doing this shtick, he's like, well, I'll show you.
He's like, how about if I do?
As always, everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you like this episode, you can listen to more episodes. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for @BASequelPodcast. Or you can watch this episode with video and little jokes here and there by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Just search for @BASequelPodcast. And outside of that, you got anything else to add, Bear?
What are we doing here at the zoo?
All right, we will see you next time.
Bye, 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 bye.